coming to a rapid conclusion. Yes, pretty quick?
Hopefully.
All right. So we've been pretty fortunate so far this year to have some cool temps, but it's here now. My family and I are going to be dropping off my daughter at college, so I need some prayers for that. Mostly for the little sister, but I wanted to share a couple of experiences I had over the summer, brief devotional, and get us started. So again, you guys are a real encouragement by getting out here early in the morning and being with us. We've got a great speaker today. Joe's going to share some ideas of what some of the things that we're doing in the ministry. But I had the wonderful opportunity to take 2 trips this summer. One of them was fun, and one was a mission trip, and actually that was fun too. But I got to take my family to Paris and London. Spent a little time in London, and one of the things we went to, in addition to all the stuff you would normally do, kind of weird, is we went to some prisons. Not active prisons, but historic prisons. We went to this place called the Clink. Anybody in here ever heard of somebody named John Rogers? So John Rogers actually was one of the famous inmates at this prison called the Clink. And one of the reasons he was in there is that the Queen Mary had put him in there. He helped to translate and did some work following the life of William Tyndale, who helped to translate into English from Greek and Hebrew the New Testament, and then John Rogers, a lot of the work he did was in the Old Testament. That plus his consistent preaching and trying to do what? Translate God's Word into the language of the common people. Ended up costing him his life. He was burned at the stake as a heretic. Experience number 1. Experience number 2. Got a wonderful opportunity to go on a mission trip to Honduras with our youth group at church. So about 9 youth, about 7 adults. In Honduras, you can go into the schools, the public schools, and share the gospel. So you got to get on a plane, and then a boat, and then a train, and then a bus, and a taxi, and then a shuttle to get to a school away from here to be able to go in and talk about Jesus. We went into 12 different schools. There was a bunch of white kids talking to Hondurans, and so we had to have that message translated. These kids learned their testimonies. They learned their stories. We did some skits. We did some music. And then we did testimonies 12 different times in 12 different schools. Kids got up in front of close to 3,000 people over those couple of days and shared their testimony. And then one of the youth from the church in Honduras translated it into a language that could be understood by the people we were talking to. Translating God's Word into the language that can be understood by the people we're trying to reach. About 15 years ago, we were working fairly closely with the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, partnering with them in this movement called Christ in the Workplace. And one of the speakers at a conference that we were at said this. He said, unless the church is willing to speak the language of the society it's attempting to impact, that society is liable to deem it as irrelevant. We've got to learn how to speak the language of the secretary and the factory worker, and the teacher and the small business person and the salesman and the custodian. You see, too much of us over time, not necessarily in this room, but as Christians feel like, I've got to figure out how I go and talk to my neighbor, my coworker, or my friend, and invite them to something at a physical location, church, so that I can set them in front of my pastor, and my pastor can talk to them about Jesus. Bringing somebody to Jesus. Now we need to do that. We need to be people of invitation. But what we really need to be doing is taking Jesus to them. We need to be able to do it in language that's contextualized for the marketplace and be able to communicate God's love, living out our faith in such a way that it translates and that they can understand. BLE exists primarily, and one of the things that's very important to us and what we believe is that God will be glorified by a growing and cohesive group of believers being equipped as effective ambassadors for Christ in the marketplace. So whether it's at a kingdom breakfast where we hear stories about how God is transforming a workplace, or it's in a small group setting when you're saying, how do I operate my business or do my job to the glory of God? Or I'm in a group with people and I'm wondering, can I even do this where I work? Is it legal? Should I do it? How do I do it? Do I recognize that my ability to produce wealth is a gift from God? And I'm supposed to use those gifts to serve others. And whatever I do, I work at it as working for the Lord. And so BLE is here to stand alongside of you guys to help in whatever way that might be, to help first you and or those around you to make that initial connection, to discover and apply biblical principles to your career and your daily life, to talk about what it means to consecrate your business, to dedicate what it is that you do each and every day. To consecrate means to set aside as holy, and to change our language that we use from my job, my business, I own it, to I'm a manager, I'm a steward, I'm overseeing this for the kingdom. And to stand alongside of you as you are commissioned to go in. I had a wonderful conversation. Larry? Claude, I'm sorry.
You can call me Larry.
With Claude this morning. He said he spent 35 years in the Air Force, and the first 10 of those years, he was trying to figure out a way to get out so that he could go do ministry. How do I get out of this thing that I'm doing because I'm feeling called by God? And luckily, God spoke to him where he was and said, the people in and around you are the ones I want you to be praying for every single day. I want you to invest in them. I want you to share God's love with them. This is your called congregation right where you are. We work with a pastor as part of our mission group at Trinity that's in Ghana, and over the last 10 years they've planted 900 churches. Wonderful mission in homes all across that region. We typically will have a map up here with dots on it. We've got close to 30 studies going on in 19 different locations here in San Antonio. They're not specifically churches, but they're plants with a strategic ambassador that's there that says, I'm going to do what God's calling me to do each and every day as I go into this place and I do life in the very place where I spend 60 to 70% of my waking hours. I am an ambassador. God has called me. I have the same responsibility as my pastor has to try to reach people. So my encouragement to you as you go from here today and go out there is, what's God calling me to do today? How can I exercise my faith muscles where I work today? How can I love on others? How can I be available for others? And how can I glorify God in all that I say and do? I'll pray, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joe.